Hello and welcome. Today's video is actually an interesting one. I haven't actually known about this particular event very long, but when I heard about it, it really struck interest in me, so I went and researched it, and now I'm going to be bringing it to you. It is a bit of a weird topic, so I think it is going to sort of give you a bit of a mind boggle. So, if you like all things interesting, weird and historical, turn out the lights, grab a drink, it's going to get interesting. So today's video is about the Cadaver Synod. The Cadaver Synod took place between the 9th and the 10th century during a time which Italy was in quite a bit of political instability. The whole event started with someone named Formosus. Formosus became Pope of Porta Santa Rufina in 864 during the time of Pope Nicholas I. Formosus was said to have done missionary work among the Bulgarian nation and was so popular out there that they'd actually requested to the Pope for him to become and be the bishop there. Nicholas I actually declined this request because at this time bishops could not serve another area while already having been assigned a specific area. In 875, the King of Italy, King Charles the Bold, had his coronation, and John VIII was now Pope. Formosus actually feared John VIII as there was a lot of conflict between them and would eventually flee the country. In 876, John VIII would actually go on to make accusations against Formosus and some of his associates for corrupting the minds of the Bulgarians that he'd worked with so that they wouldn't actually accept anybody else as their bishop. Along with various other accusations, including accusations as to why Formosus had originally fled the country when he became Pope, John would eventually go on to excommunicate Formosus. In December of 882, John VIII would actually go on to pass away and Formosus seemed to be in the clear. He returned to his role at Porto until he was eventually elected in 891. He remained Pope until 896. Now, during the 8th and 9th century, before he had been Pope, Rome had been in constant wars and as well as having feuds among the nobles of the country and external influences stoking the fires to cause more havoc and increase these feuds. Formosus actually stepped into the role of Pope right off the back of all of these problems, and some of his immediate actions and the things that he changed did not sit very well with the public or other popes or even some of the noble families. Not to mention that his constant feud and distrust of one of the biggest families in Rome and Italy at that time, which was Guy Spoleto, did not exactly aid his view within the public eye either. Formosus actually went on to try and turn some people against the Spoleto family and try and raise an army to overthrow them to kind of get some of the feud out of the way. Formosus would suddenly die from a case of paralysis, which coincidentally solved a lot of Guy's problems. In 896, Pope Stephen VI would be elected Pope. Not much is actually known about Pope Stephen VI's early life. In fact, his date of birth and his original birth name is unknown to history. The only thing that's really known about him is that he was the son of a priest. Now, a priest was quite a new concept at this point in history. There weren't really priests at that time. It was kind of considered science fiction, or what we'd now call science fiction to the people then. It was a very new concept. The only thing that's also really known is that he would follow his father's footsteps and become a priest himself. He would actually later be raised into the bishop status by Formosus himself, quite possibly against his will, and heavily encouraged by Guy Spoleto, as Stephen was a big supporter of the Spoleto family. When he was eventually elected, one of his biggest sponsors was the Spoleto family, which at this point was still a big noble family and had a lot of influence within the general public. Pope Stephen VI was only Pope for a year, and in this year he would go on to overturn every decision that Formosus had made, as well as revoke all of his appointments, which would actually kind of be considered a problem, as it was actually Formosus that anointed Stephen to be a bishop. However, this was overlooked, even though in a lot of what Stephen did, he would have been demoted from Pope back to his original position as a priest, but he decided to overlook this and contradict himself, but that's something else, and actually launched a purge of the Roman politics. 7 months after the death of Formosus, when Stephen was actually the Pope at this point, he would go on to exhume the body of Formosus and put him on trial and to be charged with heresy, as well as a number of arcane offences against the church. Now, a lot of these accusations go back to John VIII and what he had accused him of, and that was the basis of a lot of the accusations and the reason why Stephen VI would actually exhume his body. A deacon was actually chosen to speak on behalf of Formosus, and what he would actually do is go down on his hands and knees behind the chair that Formosus was placed in and speak on his behalf. They would dress Formosus in the vestment of office clothing, and he was actually sat up on the powerful throne. The deacon aside, when directed questions were asked at him, such as, "Why did you do such things?" would only answer, "Because I was evil," seeing the fate of Formosus to be seen as guilty. It's actually said that the council members assembled to be witness to this were actually put through watching Stephen VI shout and scream at the body of Formosus, as well as sometimes become very aggressive towards the body, which for them was just absolutely insane and barbaric, as to them this was just a corpse. He was not alive, but yet the way Stephen was acting was almost like he was a living person still. At the end of the trial, Stephen VI called for the robes to be removed from Formosus' body, then cut off the 3 fingers that he would originally have done the blessings with. His body was then put into a commoner's grave, which at this point, especially within this particular religion, was seen as a bit of an insult towards people who had worked in office. Shortly after that, Stephen would actually re-exhume Formosus' body and actually dump it into the river Tiber, but was eventually recovered by a monk. Due to the behaviour and the actions of Stephen with exhuming Formosus' body in the first place was seen as so ludicrous and barbaric by the public that it was not taken very well, and a mob would come to Stephen and place him in prison. His successor, Romanus, reversed all of his decrees on Formosus' body, was eventually returned and put back into his original grave, and as punishment for his actions against Formosus, someone who had already passed away, Romanus would actually call for Stephen to be strangled in his cell. Another pope would come on after Romanus and actually undo everything that Romanus had done, and actually allow Stephen to be put into a normal pope's grave as well, and then eventually another pope would come on and redo all of that again, and there was a bit of a continuation of being undone, until eventually Formosus was in the clear and Stephen was in the clear, and it was essentially settled, even though that this had gone on. So there you have it, guys. It's not going to be the longest video because there's really not much to say on this. It's just a really interesting concept. That is the Cadaver Synod. If you did like this, do put a comment down below of other things that you'd like to hear about within history. If not, I hope you have a wonderful week. As a blessing from me to you, may your house always be filled with the sound of music, and you always wake up to the smell of fresh baking. And until then, I'll see you on the flip side. Bye!